All right, welcome to the second part. We are starting with goal number 7. I'll speak a little bit faster now so that we can cover SDGs, remaining 11 SDGs in a limited time. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, modern energy. So, all these words are combined. I know it might be slightly confusing. Uh, Reliance on um, one type of energy can be a problem in the long run, and solar type of energy is improving, and solar access 10 years ago, the infrastructure required for solar energy was not only expensive but also not as efficient as it is right now, and it is improving. So we have to invest in solar, we have to invest in wind, thermal power, the energy that has been generated right now, it should be um, passed through good quality infrastructure. The grids should be of good quality so that efficiencies can be reached, losses should be minimized, and technology access should be upgraded, and not only upgraded in terms of usage but also in terms of the network, the distribution network. Share of renewable energy should be increased. Developed world, especially the ones in Germany and other developed European countries, have been focusing a lot on this, um, increasing the share of renewable energy in the total energy mix. Uh, this I already spoke about, expanding the infrastructure and upgrading the technology. Many of the uh, machineries or infrastructure that we use in Pakistan are outdated. This is why there are a lot of inefficiencies, and we have to make sure that we can cut down the inefficiencies. Eighth goal is promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth, and part of it is linked with the employment and increasing economic opportunities. Okay, so sustainable per capita economic growth is one of the indicators, and we saw in the previous lecture that it's not only about increasing money, it's about increasing the other aspects of human life as well, and we have been talking about this in this lecture as well. Human economic productivity should be increased through diversification, innovation. We should focus on global resource efficiency so that resources are not wasted, and we should make sure that by achieving diversity, we are also increasing economic opportunities, because diversity could also mean that you are obsoleting some of the existing infrastructure because of innovation, because of creative destruction, and the labor that goes obsolete should also have the opportunity to learn something different and find jobs. So this is what we mean by increasing economic opportunities. Um, Employment rates should increase, forced labor should go down. This goes very well with the equality as well. So, gender rights, also child rights, not only in terms of child rights, but also forced labor is kind of a slave labor as well. So, human trafficking, all these kind of things are included in this. Working environment should be good. So if you are achieving good economic growth at the cost of poor working environment, then it's not good. Increasing income is good, but working environment should also be good, because humans are important. Tourism is also important, because it is strongly linked with economic growth. Capacity of domestic financial institutions, if they are improved, then they also are able to provide loans to the small scale and medium scale investors. They can invest in their ventures, increase employment and increase income growth. Ninth goal is building a resilient infrastructure, promoting sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. Innovation was partly covered in the previous slide as well, but innovation is an expensive activity. But not all innovation is, sometimes when we talk about innovation, we confuse it with, we wrongly think about it as a technological innovation. It's not only that. Innovation means that doing something new, producing or using a different method to produce the same thing, or producing entirely something new. It doesn't always mean that it's an expensive venture. It doesn't always mean it is linked with high-tech innovation. So it can be a different method to produce agricultural goods without using any kind of high-tech machinery. No? So the idea is that there should be enough encouragement in the economy to innovate. So higher innovation means that you can produce more types of products, more quantity of products given the level of resources. So resource efficiency also is directly linked with this one. Then what kind of industries should be boosted? Scientific research should be increased by investing in research and development, and some segments of the country, if they are far behind in terms of technological access, they should be provided access. One of the examples is of internet. Right now, many students cannot access these online lectures because in far-flung areas we do not have access to internet. Even though Pakistan is one of the countries with highest level of internet access in the world, still in many areas we do not have internet. So this is one of those things that need to be improved by 2030. This, I think I've talked about all this. Infrastructure should be improved. Industrialization has to be. So there is previously, because of the lack of high cost energy, many firms from Pakistan moved to different countries. So promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, meaning moving from other sectors towards industrialization, because many of the developed countries took this path earlier, and that has been the reason behind their rapid growth. So this comes under goal number 9. So if there are industrial sectors in any country, of course there are in every country, if they are outdated, the task is to upgrade them, to match them with the international standards, because it's not only about satisfying the domestic needs, it's also about competing in the international markets so that the exports can also increase. Scientific research is kind of a common theme going around in almost all the SDGs, because in order to find better ways to do what you're doing, you need innovation, you need research. And again, I'm giving example of this coronavirus. In order to make sure how to reduce the spread, then find a balance to make sure that a poor segment of the society is not as affected because of the lack of employment opportunities due to lockdown. All this requires scientific research. Okay. There should be support for domestic technology development. Developing countries mostly rely on the technology that has been developed in Western countries. So there should be an emphasis on creating your own tech so that you can find cheaper solutions and also maybe export them as well. 10th is reduce inequality within and among countries. So financial markets and foreign direct investments could be the solutions, one of the some of the solutions, the ways of achieving this. So equality not only in terms of gender but also in terms of race and ethnicity, and widening divide has to cut down. So to by 2030 progressively achieving sustainable income growth for the bottom 40%. Bottom 40% means that the 40% of the population that is at the bottom of the income quintiles. To empower them to promote political and economic and social inclusion for all the different segments that are mentioned in point number 2, and greater equality. So in general, there should be equal access to every segment of the population. Okay, and financial institutions are included in this because financial regulations sometimes favor the ones who already have certain level of income or wealth. So if you want to improve equality, you also have to find a way to empower those who do not have anything to offer as a collateral. So by imposing the need for collateral, of course, banks also want to save their money, but policy should be designed in a way that those who cannot offer any collateral, they should also be given some kind of financial assistance, because they have to start from somewhere, right? This is primarily a problem in developing countries. In many developed countries, this problem has been going down, but it exists, but it is higher in developing countries in general. Migration should also be controlled in such a way that it is mutually beneficial for everybody. Developed countries here have the responsibilities to not only financially but also in other ways help the poor countries in achieving these goals. So global inequalities, global effort to increase equality across countries mean that those who have more money, they should through foreign assistance help the least developed countries, and also the countries who do not have these kind of resources. Okay. SDG number 11 is making cities inclusive, safe and resilient. This goal is primarily about cities. Rapid growth of cities in the developing world, coupled with increasing rural and urban migration. So there has been a growing trend also in Pakistan that many rural, especially men from rural areas, they move to cities and then they bring their families as well. So when families move from rural areas to urban areas, population density increases and it makes it difficult for the governments to provide services to everyone. Okay, so there are urban slums in cities like Mumbai, where one side is extremely rich, the other side is slums. People are living in really poor conditions. Though this is because these people who are living in slums, they migrated from rural areas in search of employment opportunities, and since they cannot afford to live in expensive housing, they have to live in really poor conditions with bad water and sanitation, bad health access, and everything you can imagine. So and under goal number 11, this has to change. Affordable access, safe access to everybody involved. Transportation systems should be improved. In Islamabad, for example, in Pakistan, it's very difficult for poor to move because government does not operate. Government has some metro buses there, but routes are very limited. So it's not as frequent like in Western countries where they have trams, they have buses, they have metros. We have a metro bus service available, no trams, but there are small Suzukis that are usually cramped. So transportation infrastructure is not very good. This has to be improved under this SDG. Guarding against floods, earthquakes, this also comes here. So buildings should be made with materials that are sustainable, that are not prone to significant damages when it comes to floods and earthquakes. So this is one of those things, but it's not limited to, but this is not only limited to cities, this is also applicable to rural households as well. Then we are talking about cultural heritage. So the cost of developing a city should not be at the cost of like demolishing cultural heritage to build up big skyscrapers. So this had been the case in the past, and in the recent movement is to avoid this and to make sure that cultural heritage is preserved, and urbanization is not happening at the cost of this. Environmental aspects also should be covered so that air pollution is controlled. Green spaces should be increased. There is a lot of work going on around the world, also in Pakistan, to do that, and this is the way to go. So everywhere you will see green initiatives, you will see goal number 11 of SDGs. Goal number 12 is responsible consumption and production patterns. Developed countries have more responsibility in this, not only in helping developing countries, but also in fixing things inside their own countries, because food waste is very, very high in developed countries as compared to the developing countries. You may have seen a lot of videos where supermarkets are throwing away good quality food in the bins because they are reaching the said expiry dates. Fruits and vegetables, just because they do not look very good, they are thrown away. So we have to minimize this food waste. We have to make sure that the chemical procedures, production and usage are sustainable and safe. And so wastage has to decrease because waste generation is included in almost all economic activities. So recycling is very, very important, and this comes under goal number 12. So lifestyles should change because many of the urban lifestyles include a lot of wastage. This is actually more applicable to the rich segment of the society, not only in countries but also across countries. Rich countries tend to waste more resources than poor countries. But the sharing relevant information is also very, very important. How to change the lifestyle. If some country has a good example, they should share with other countries as well. This is where international collaboration comes into play. So from government's point of view, subsidies could also be one of the things that should be considered in this goal number 12. For example, fossil fuel subsidies, if they are encouraging the use of fossil fuel, damaging the environment and shifting population from, or stopping them from using solar energy, for example, that means that this policy has to be taken back so that there is a responsible production and consumption. Goal number 13 is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. So climate action is partially, we saw this before as well, that we need to make sure that CO2 emission is not going too high. We need to make sure that air pollution has to be controlled. We need to make sure that anything that is damaging the climate has to be controlled, and the progress should not be at the cost of damaging the environment. That is the important thing. Climate action means that the development or GDP per capita growth should not be at the cost of damaging the climate, air pollution, industrial usage of resources, also irrigation and domestic use of the resources as well. They should be responsible, so that the climate change is taken into account. This is the primarily what this climate action goal number 13 talks about. So this is also linked with climate change. Human activities that are affecting the climate, human activities are also affecting life below water. So the idea is that the marine life should be preserved, and our activities should be realigned in a way that it should reduce marine pollution. Most of the countries, especially developing countries, they dump their waste into the ocean. This is causing serious damage to the ecosystem, and overfishing is another problem. Illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing is causing a lot of damage because many of the species are going extinct. So the usage of marine resources should be responsible. So if there are any policy instruments that are encouraging overfishing, they should be reconsidered, and there should be a research capacity to ensure how to make sure that the future generations in a country or around the world have access to the resources that we have today. So if we overuse some of the resources, it is quite possible that our future generation will not have access to them, because we are damaging the ecosystem because of over extracting from the oceans. Goal number 15 is about sustainably managing resources and making sure that the forests stay intact. Conservation and restoration of terrestrial ecosystems such as forests, wetlands and drylands is one of the goals of SDGs. Goal number 15. Deforestation is at the heart of this goal. The aim is to make sure that forest coverage not only stays intact but also increases, because over the period of time forest coverage is going down. So life on land, when forest coverage goes down, it also affects animal habitat significantly. So the idea is that flora and fauna should be protected, and there should be integrated ecosystem and biodiversity. There should be an incentive to involve communities to increase the forest coverage, and the industrial usage of wood should be regulated so that forest coverage is not affected because of the over extraction of wood from the forests. 16th goal is promote just, peaceful and inclusive societies. It's about violence, it's about the conflicts and insecurities. It involves institutions, legal institutions also, not only within countries but also across countries, so that peace and injustice is not the domestic issue, internal issue, it's a global issue. There are conflicts within the country and also across countries as well. So we need strong institutions. So this is about rule of law. It's about strengthening the institutions. It's about updating the laws and implementing them in the best way possible, so that we can fight against corruption, we can fight against exploitation, everything actually. The rule of law institutions, legal institutions are backbone of any country. So any violation, if there is a weak rule of law, any violation will go unaddressed, and it creates a serious imbalance in a country. And it's not only about strengthening institutions, it's also about empowering people by giving information about their rights. So if people know that there is a law or there is a provision that can protect me from some injustice, then people should know that, and they should also know that their institutions are willing to help them and their institutions are willing to fight for them. And last goal is revitalization of a global partnership for sustainable development. So goal number 17 actually states that the SDGs can only be realized with strong global partnerships. And partnerships are not limited to north and south, they are also south and south, so that countries in south can also help each other out. This is in particular to trade, but it's not limited to it. There can be innovation, collaborations, and knowledge sharing, and so on, that can help these countries achieving these SDGs, the ones that we have mentioned already in the previous slides. Could be finance. Again, there is a big role of developed countries, the ones in the north, who can help the south to achieve their goals. And actually, they have put some numbers, attached some numbers to assign the responsibilities to developed countries to help the poor countries. For many developed countries, it's 0.7% of official development assistance as the percentage of GNI. They have to give it to the developing countries, and 0.15 to 0.2% of ODA / GNI to least developed countries. So when you are in developing country category, you are entitled to less amount of money, but developed countries have accepted when they signed the SDGs that they are going to provide this kind of assistance to the developing world. Technology, collaboration in technology, sharing ideas, sharing innovation, diffusion of ideas linked with how you can save the environment, how good practices from developed world can be transferred, the ones that can be transferred based on the context specific situation. So there is a responsibility of the developed world to share ideas, not only north and south, but also south and south. So the things that are working in Bangladesh could also be useful for Pakistan because of the similar geographic location, similar cultures, and so on. So south and south linkages are also very important. Capacity building. In our technological chapters, when we are talking about innovation, we discuss the role of absorptive capacity. So this is one of those things. Capacity building is increasing the ability of people to do things. We discussed in the first part of this lecture that communities should be trained to manage the water resources. So they have to have the capacity to maintain the water supply. So this is one of the examples. So to develop the capacity to do innovation, to develop the capacity to develop your own technology, to implement the policies and so on, North can help South, and South can also help their fellow countries. Trade, this is a global phenomenon. It's not only between North and South, it's between each other. So in line with this goal, many organizations like WTO are giving preferential quotas to the developing countries so that they can improve their exports, of course by following certain regulations, and it helps them improve their capacity as well. Then there are some systemic issues, policy and institutional coherence, global macroeconomic stability, and these are common issues where countries can help each other out. Multi-stakeholder partnerships, it's about, again, sharing knowledge. It's like many countries are working together to achieve these SDGs. It's also possible that if I want a good quality health system in my country, I can collaborate with India and we can form a multi-stakeholder partnership to achieve a mutual goal, something like this. Data monitoring and accountability, as I mentioned before, for MDGs, we started PSLM and high-yield surveys in Pakistan, and data monitoring has to increase so that we can monitor our progress, and also we can seek help from other countries who have done much better than ourselves, so that we can learn from their experiences. So these were the 17 SDGs, and I've rushed through some of them, but I'll share the website content, and also share these slides for you to go through them. I do not expect you to remember all of them. I will not ask you what is the SDG 11, for example, but I do expect that you understand the concept behind each one of them. If I ask you what is the goal of life on land, I do not expect you to memorize the goals, but I do expect that you understand what life on land is about. You can write in your own words that what SDG 15 is trying to do. So just read through them, and if I ask them in your examination, then you should know the concepts behind them. I do not expect you to memorize each one of them. Okay. So this last picture right here is showing how each one of the SDG is interconnected. So I'm not going to go through them. This is just for your consumption. Just have a look at it and see that many of the goals are interconnected. I have also mentioned the source of this image. So if you want a better quality image, you can go to the original source and have a look. Just it's interesting that many goals are interconnected with each other. So if you achieve one, it kind of partially achieves the other. So it looks like it's information overflow when we have 17 goals and so many indicators, but if they are interconnected, it means that if you achieve one, you kind of achieve the others as well. So thank you very much for watching. So this concludes our lecture on SDG, and I'll send you the slides for this. Thank you very much.